Hey, I'm here.
Okay, welcome everyone to the June 16th Utilities Committee meeting. We are going to start with talking about the McCormick Woods DOH Consolidation Grant.
And I'm going to turn that over to Jackie.
Okay, would you like me to share my screen so I have the documents and whatnot up?
Sure.
Okay, the McCormick Woods Consolidation Grant is, it's $30,000, and we went down the path. We chose a consulting firm, Parametrics, and were unable to negotiate a contract with them. So we went down the path of making a choice again, and this time chose HDR. And I am in the midst of negotiating with them. Both of these consultants, their legal departments had a little bit of an issue with some of the verbiage on the standard contract that's approved by AWC. So I'm right now waiting. Brandy was on vacation last week, but I'm waiting for her to get back to me with AWC's comments on the modifications that HDR asked to the verbiage. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
And
that was the same issue with Parametrics, Jackie?
It was one of the sections was the same, and Parametrics had a problem with a second section of it also. But this is a $0 for the city because I've limited the consultant's contract to exactly what the grant is, which is $30,000. Basically, what this is meant to be is a high clip overview of how we're going to solve the problem of fluoridation versus non-fluoridation in the McCormick Woods when we intertie, and also the best way to go about intertie, so that I have some kind of engineered document or engineering type document that I can use as documentation for applying for loans and the Water Infrastructure Finance Act money.
Okay. All right.
And we've been dealing with that language ever since AWC added it. Every firm has contested it, their legal department. Section 12, which is the indemnification section. I mean, at some point, AWC is going to have to just back off on what they're wanting, because it isn't coincidence that every single firm is, I mean, in the past, we've kind of pushed and said, well, either accept our language or don't go under contract, and they've usually conceded. And now we've got somebody that wasn't going to concede, so we've had to go with another firm. So it's problematic.
A part of that too is the fact that this is only a $30,000 contract, so they're not really willing to, I mean, it's not a huge moneymaker for them.
That makes sense. All right. Moving on to the GSP update.
I have some great news there. I finally found a contact with Ecology, so that I've sent them the final draft, if you will, so that they could begin their review of it unofficially. And I did a SEPA checklist, which went to DCD, and Nick has signed off on a determination of non-significance. So I have to check with, I just got that yesterday. I have to check with them tomorrow to find out about publishing and getting all of that done so that we get through the comment period, and then it will officially go to Department of Ecology.
Cool. All right.
And that's going to pave the way for us to get that amendment in place, which also allows then for Katie Isaacson to finish up her CFC activity. Correct, Jackie?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Okay. McCormick Sewer Pump Station, #1 repairs.
McCormick Sewer Pump Station 1. Okay, so we have two issues there. Let me get caught up here. In your packet, you've got a photograph and you've got an opinion from RomTech, who is kind of the system designer. And then you have an email that I sent to McCormick. And basically this is kind of just a high clip conversation. You can read the email more in detail, but we ended up stumbling upon this when we were going back and doing some final work on plugging up the old wet wells. And when they had unearthed that also caused them to unearth the connection from the old force main to the new system we put in. And while they did that, they noticed that in that picture, that big massive connection point, that lateral was moving. Not only was it moving, but the lugs, several of the lugs, duct lugs, had actually failed. So we're lucky that we found out that as these pumps were kicking on and off and we were getting different forces from different directions, that this thing was failing. So we let RV know. They put those ecology blocks in temporarily, but then they said, hey, we just did it per the approved plan. RomTech came back with the, hey, we just need to ramp down the startup and the shutdown of these pumps and everything's fine. I disagreed with that. They said that this is all part of normal fine tuning. And so in my email, I basically said that this is a discovery. It wasn't anybody's fault, but it's an Arizona emissions type discovery, and that simply turning down the system isn't correcting the problem because the problem is still in place. And 10 years from now, we get some employee that goes out there and they go, hey, you're only pumping at 75%. Let's turn this thing up. And suddenly they unknowingly crank it back up and the thing blows out of the ground. So as I said, I recognize that if we don't correct this now, the system has the ability to recreate the situation that would have been a catastrophic failure. So I've subsequently talked to McCormick, and they are working with RomTech to determine actual forces in play, which I think is both forces from the pumps starting up and shutting down, and also some water hammer from the, I don't know how many mile long 16-inch force main that goes up to Pottery and Tremont. So they're going to determine those forces and determine the appropriate level of thrust blocking and tieback blocking so that we can get this thing secured properly and then get it buried and be done with it. So that's the one issue, and they're still waiting for dry enough weather to take care of the other issue, which was that groundwater intrusion that we reported on before. So the system's functioning. We've got it ramped down a little bit, but it's fine. But we have to still, before we release the bond, we need the groundwater intrusion issue fixed and this connection point movement fixed. So that's where we're at on that.
Mark, how are they going to fix the intrusion? Do you know?
They've got to basically they tried drilling holes in the wall and squeezing some sort of epoxy grout, something, and that didn't work. They're going to have to dig down on that east side there down by the wetland and actually put in some sort of a curtain drain, footing drain, something to let RVs looked at it. They can get a drain to work. They just have to wait till drier weather, and that's why we're holding on to their performance bond until that work is done.
Okay. Boy, that might not even be for a while yet, huh? You've got some more rain coming.
June has been absolutely miserable. So I've been trying to paint my cabin top on my boat, and I can't do it. I can't paint. It's too damp.
Yes, I know that one. All right, is that it for that?
Yeah, that's it for that topic. The next one is the 580 Water Campus update. And Jackie's got she's got a memo. So if you want to just go over that, Jackie, and let everybody know kind of where we're at.
This is for the most part, a monthly memo that I get from Greg Krabby from McCormick Communities telling me where things are at. Oh, here comes Rob too. Where things are at as far as progress in the campus. Well 12, I think we talked about this pretty extensively at our last utility committee meeting about how they had discovered a new, what they think is a new aquifer out there. We went down a little deeper than we thought we were going to be able to, and did find water-bearing formations. We just don't have that report from Robinson Noble yet, and that's still the case. As far as the 580 tank, we have been, Ian has been, and I and Tony have all been looking at some preliminary plans for the tank. They've applied for the foundation permit, and they've got the geotech stuff done. So that's where they're moving right along with that tank. The next
Jackie,
section,
are we going to meet are we running a little late on that, or are we going to meet our deadlines that we have with Bremerton on that tank?
I think they'll meet the deadline. I think so.
Okay.
Once it goes fast. So I feel pretty comfortable. The next section is about their deal with the city of Bremerton, since this report goes to the city of Bremerton also, as well as this Anderson pump station generator. That was part of their agreement with Bremerton. The 580 transmission line, this is from the new tank and well 12 into the into McCormick's development. And they originally thought they were going to go down Old Clifton Road, and then they decided they didn't want to do road restoration, so they gave us some preliminary plans about how to go off through countryside rather than on Old Clifton. And basically it looked like a snake going through there because they had to avoid all the wetlands. So now I think they're back to going down Clifton instead. And then of course the last section of this memo is about the splash park, the splash pad that Port Orchard is now working on, since we found out that we could not allow them to do that work since it is a public work.
And on the splash pad, I just sent we had sent out an RFQ. We had 3 responsive teams. 2 of them were more like big architectural firms. It wasn't what we were looking for. We ended up going with a company out of Spokane that does a lot of design build. They know that they're just designing this, but they'll be able to bid on the actual work. We verified with Charlie that they can do that. So we've got everything. You'll have it on your agenda on the 23rd for approval. Land Expressions is who we selected, and their contract amount was $41,000 to do the design, some permitting, and Yeah, and ad ready, getting it ad ready. And there was 100,000 in that current fund. So going this route, obviously, Noah's gonna have to come up with some more funding, but I think we're okay at this point. To get this part done and then get an engineer's estimate. These guys build a lot of splash pads, and so to retrofit this from a flow through to a recycled system, that's right up their alley. So it's the most cost-effective way of doing it, other than if we could have had McCormick do it, but we found out we couldn't do that. So
Are we even going to be allowed to make use of this splash pad this year, given the COVID?
Right
we
now.
haven't planned on opening it until August or September anyway, so there's a very good chance that we won't even open it this year. I hadn't really talked to
Probably
them.
phase 4.
Phase 4 we need?
I would think, and we were having a conversation today about our public facilities, from the active club to, there's lots of groups and people that use City Hall. And even if we go to phase 3 next week,
Yeah.
we're ready to embrace the public here and made the necessary improvements and cleaning to sneeze guards and all the things we need to do, but we're not ready to have groups of people come rent our rooms. And we've got additional cleaning requirements and things of that nature. So we talked about that a bit today. I think phase 4 is the appropriate time to consider that, and that's probably the appropriate time. I mean, we're going to get more than 50 people around that splash pad on a hot day.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have any way to control that.
In addition to those issues, when they started doing the investigation for exactly how this was going to be designed, Tony, you may want to jump in here, but weren't some issues discovered with the mechanics out there?
In relation to what are you talking about?
The splash pad, the workings of the splash pad.
Oh, as far as the control panel that we had issues with?
Exactly.
Yeah, we ordered a new screen. We should be fine with that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
When the time comes, yeah, we'll be okay.
So what happened there, guys, is the, like it's like a computer, that controls this and tells when the jet's to go off. Well, it was mounted in a vault in the ground. Well, guess what? It rains here in the Northwest and things get wet. It wasn't so good for the little computer that controls the splash pad. So as we make modifications, that component, in a minimum in the future, that we're gonna remove that computer in the wintertime when it's not in use. But ideally, it's mounted. There's going to be a building associated with this retrofit, and likely it's going to be in a much more controlled environment.
Boy, it gets more complicated all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next item we have is just our work plan update. So I guess what's happening with water rights in Foster, Jackie?
Well, we have discovered through the Watershed Restoration and Enhancement Committee, which is not part of the Foster decision, but part of the Hearst decision fix, that the Squaxin tribe has never had their water rights adjudicated, which means that they are basically not defined. And so they were talking about permit exempt wells when they were talking about this, but it flows over into permitted wells also. I'm sure that we can look for a negative feedback when they're asked for their opinion about our water rights change applications and new applications. So we're kind of gearing up for that. And as I get information from the REC, which is the Watershed Restoration Enhancement Committee, from the REC, that I'm sharing all of that, even though again it's Hearst fix based. I'm sharing all of that with our consultants, and so that we're prepared for it when it comes.
And again, that was the Squaxin.
Where is that tribe at, Jackie?
Squaxin is the one out by Shelton.
Yeah, Little Creek Casino.
Yeah. The problem is that when When they run the hydraulic model, which we now know, we talked about this at the last utility committee meeting, we now know that the hydraulic or the groundwater model is incorrect because it doesn't show that other fourth aquifer that we found. So we know that needs to be modified, but that's basically what the only thing the Foster has to base their modeling on. So when Robinson Noble does the groundwater modeling, putting in the wells and the withdrawals that we've requested, it shows basically it affects the creeks that flow into North Bay, which North Bay is Allen, okay, which is the Squaxin Islands tribal grounds. So Coulter Creek, Rocky Creek, those creeks that are out there in the bottom part of Kitsap County and a little bit into Mason County are affected as well.
Okay. Well, 13, we're done drilling and pump testing. I think we're waiting for the final water quality results. We got favorable results on the initial, but we're going to go back and have ATEC. Aren't they going to run a green sand on it to confirm, Jackie?
That's my understanding. Of course, this is Chris's project at this point, but I'm really anxious to see the actual report on water quality so that I can get a look at the other parameters besides just iron manganese.
But the good news is this aquifer they hit at 13, they've had a 0.03, not a 0.3. I think it was a 0.03 milligram per liter.
That's correct.
And that's below the 0.05. My concern is I just want to make sure that this will be our one chance. If we think we're going to have to add treatment to that, now's the time to do it. And I want to make sure that the delta, the margin of safety between 0.5 and 0.3 is significant enough that we don't have to, because if we don't have to add an ATEC treatment system, that'll be money that we can put towards the Maple Street, Maple Avenue work. So fingers crossed that we don't have to potentially have treatment at well 13.
And I might add to that also that I think we talked about when we discussed this at staff meeting, that we need to get some more samples out there repeating the iron manganese, because just to verify that that is the level that we have, the levels that we have, because if that is the verified level, then the likelihood, because this is such a deep aquifer, the likelihood of it changing over time is very, very slim.
Jackie and Mark, I think you mentioned that the water would be pulled from 2 different levels in that well. Is that right? The 1300 and deeper, or did I misunderstand? Was it that 1300 level that influenced the pulling of water from as far away as Allen?
It's 1500 and lower.
1500?
Yes. And the deeper you go, the farther out.
The further.
Yes, exactly. The more shallow you are, the less area, but the more effect per. So it's a very small impact, but yet the impacts reach out further. That you're correct.
But would that have any impact on the Foster pilot project if it wasn't so far-reaching?
Well, both of those water-bearing formations are in that QA4.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna be
There's
impacting
2
those
drains.
I
regardless.
see.
There's one at 1300 and there's one at deeper, but it's in the same formation.
I see. Okay. All right.
Well, 13 Maple, I think we're getting ready to go out and advertise that work. I know Chris is finalizing some activities with some easements and things, but I think we're very close to going ready, ad ready for that next contract of work. So, when we're done with well 13 drilling, stabilize the site, we're going to do that final water quality testing so that we know what that site looks like from pumping and treatment or non-treatment. We've got this other package, which is the well 6 cemetery directional boring type activity. So that's the next construction contract. Because remember, the site had to do with the site clearing, which was Scarcella, then Schneider Brothers doing the drilling. Then we'll have this well 6 Maple Avenue work activity, and then we'll be then bouncing back to well 13 site with its facilities. So I think we're close to going to add on that. And the well 11, 30%, we just started. Council awarded that contract on the 9th to Murray Smith, and they've started their work to do that 30% at well 13 or 11, sorry. And McCormick Pump Station 2, again, in the packet, you've got the site plan, and then we've got an updated drone shot that Darren took that now shows the main structures now being backfilled. So work is continuing on there. So we've got the stairs and the control building and the dry well.
Mark, those 2 structures in the middle, is that the old lift station?
Yeah. Yeah, that's obviously still functioning.
And that gets all abandoned when we're done?
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be similar to what they did at well or Pump Station 1.
So I know the odors have been diminished because of us modifying step systems. Will this new lift station virtually eliminate all the odors problems we've had in that area?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, this system has odor protection in it. We've also been introducing a lot less step.
Yeah.
With either the conversion, or we've been adding more
Flow too.
grinder influence from other developments. So I guess Tony could speak to it more, but I don't anticipate any odor problems in the future with this new system.
It's there on once in a while, but I mean, it was always there, 5 years ago. Wouldn't you agree, Jay? I mean, you drive there more than I do.
Yes, I would concur with that.
It was smelly.
Yeah, well, all it had was that charcoal filter.
You didn't want to light a cigarette by it, that's for sure.
If you guys don't know where this is at, it's right there at the entrance to McCormick Woods across the street.
Familiar with it.
It's been very impressive, the work site, and basically they have not interrupted traffic flow. They've done a nice job.
They're moving along. They're going to be done in October, according to the plan. So they'll probably be finishing up Pump Station 2 about the time McCormick finishes up Pump Station 1.
Cool.
And then Marina Pump Station, we got a bit of a problem. Jackie's gonna
Jackie,
reach
you
out.
come to these meetings with one piece of good news.
I've had a number of good news pieces.
Jackie hasn't.
Oh, what can I say?
Well,
I
this
guess
is
I did. You weren't on the call yet, I don't think, Rob, but the general sewer plan update is sailing right along.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, she had good stuff. This is a team approach. Anyway.
Okay. I don't know about this one yet, so I'm
We're
nervous.
a pretty tight knit team. Well, we finally got. I had asked. We have our 30% designs, and so I had asked RH2 for a 60% scope and budget, and I just got that the other day and have sticker shock. It was basically close to $800,000 to get to 60%. And they've already have 250,000 in the 30% design. So kind of what we had figured would be $1 million for the entire design rather than $1 million to get to 60%. So I'm going to have, Mark calls it a fierce conversation. I'm going to have a fierce email with them and say, this is not acceptable. We've already, when they came back at the 30% design with the outrageous amount of money for construction, we already had them go back and do some value engineering, and they know that we don't have this kind of budget. So we may, just take our 30% and go play in somebody else's sandbox, or, they're going to have to figure out how to sharpen their pencils.
Yeah, there's some industry standards out there for design, and an industry standard would say they would get through ad ready and bid support and engineer of record for around $1 million. For them to only get to 60% at $1 million is crazy. And even when we did the value engineering, we took that thing from the $15 million by taking out some components and making some revisions. We got that back down to $7 million. So I don't know if she was using the $15 million as kind of the standard, but I have no problem at this point. I mean, we need to get this moving from a time standpoint, but if they're not willing to be more reasonable on their next 60% design, I have no problem advertising this with the 30% design complete and just saying we're looking for 100% in permitting and see what we get. So
Jackie, falling back on my religious upbringing, I usually refer to that as a come to Jesus meeting.
Yes, so do I. I like your style.
I was trying to use the more of the Brené Brown, get into the ring and be an active participant. So anyway, we've got to push back. We're not accepting their current proposal. So that's really all we have.
Sorry, I missed the beginning, Mark. On your capital facilities plan, did you guys get into where? Do we know where we're going to be on capital facilities charges for ERUs? Are we there yet or close?
Well, now that we've got this GSP update, the SEPA issued, and the updated CIP list, that's back in Katie's hands. So she's finishing up that for the sewer. And as far as the water system plan that we didn't put on this agenda because nothing had changed, it's on probably for the next agendas. VHC is supposed to be finishing up the water system plan, which right now is mainly Katie looking at the CFCs there.
I did have a conversation with Jim Gross today.
Okay.
And while during the conversation, I asked him where we were, and there's basically two things outstanding: Katie's analysis and this pumping information that I've been trying to put together. And it's been a struggle to put it together, but he thinks we're about 2 weeks out.
To submitting it to health,
2 weeks from our final reviews.
which at that point, then they submit to the health.
Then it goes to health. Yes, that's my understanding.
So thinking big picture on sewer plans, I mean, sewers, and for all intent, other than Marina Pump Station, we're in better shape than water. I mean, we've got the 2 lift stations in McCormick, we're wrapping up. We're designing the lift station. The next big capital facilities projects are related to Sydney South area, are really where our big couple of lift stations in that area, I would imagine.
That's exactly why we had to update the GSP, because our existing GSP had no projects. That's called Basin 7. And there were no projects in Basin 7 that had been approved in the last GSP. So we basically couldn't do anything until Ecology approved them. So there are, I believe, 4 projects in Basin 7 related to all of the development out there.
And then we have Bravo Terrace, which the developer is going to pick up with
Glenmora.
one more and other things. So yeah, so we've been a bit chaotic, but we're catching up. So I guess any other questions?
Noah would like to address the group.
No. like
Where's
the
Noah?
Group?
I'm right here.
Oh,
He
Whoa.
pops in.
wow, you just like popped out of like,
I know.
Wow. Like a rabbit out of a hat.
yeah, you're like a rabbit out of the hat. 1 minute you weren't there, the next minute you're like
That's amazing, Noah.
Alice in Wonderland. You should do that trick tonight.
Mm.
Jackie, I don't know if I can share my screen, but I'd like to share with the committee. We've been working on the utility payment plan policy. So as you recall, we adopted an ordinance delegating authority to work with customers under the COVID to develop a payment plan.
You should be able to share now, Noah.
Okay. Let me do that because I want to pull this.
Sorry to interrupt, but
There we go. And share it. There we go. I'll put my headset on also.
Noah, are there quite a few people who are going to have to make use of this?
It's actually been, the numbers have been really good. Really good in that people are continuing to make their payments. The numbers are really low as far as, I think we've had maybe one request looking for some payment options. However, the governor came out in his latest proclamation with some additional requirements on utility providers to post their policy on their website, as well as he had some direction as far as what he would like to see these payment arrangements look like. Now, again, he left it pretty vague and at the discretion of the utility provider. So we're continuing onward in the spirit of what we've already adopted through our ordinance, and also taking into consideration the governor's new proclamation about offering a longer term for larger financial arrangements.
And another factor to that too is the folks that have been laid off so far have been getting a $600 a week kicker
Mm-hmm.
to their unemployment benefits that's going to run out here soon.
Yes.
So that's part of why maybe our sales tax really wasn't off, and
Mhm.
people aren't having, problems making their payments right now because they're making actually more money than they did at their jobs.
Yeah, no, can you send me this and I'll add it to I won't add it to the agenda. I'll just add it as in the minutes.
Yes, yeah, I can do that. And we've been working on this week, so I'm hoping to get this on the council agenda next week for adoption. That's what I wanted to bring to the utility committee to kind of review and provide any input. Again, at a high level, again, the first two pieces, the purpose talks about why we're doing this. It's to relate to COVID-19, as well as the other action we took early on in COVID. It just allows us to work with utility customers that have run into some financial issues due to COVID. The real meat of this payment plan is that we're limiting it to a maximum of 6 months. So that'd be a 6-month installment plan with an exception granted by the finance director. In the policy, we're not laying it out for those utility customers. We actually have a utility payment form, which we will request that when the utility customer wants to request a payment arrangements, they will have to indicate for us whether they meet the longer term payment arrangement requirement. So in the form itself, we're identifying high balances. Again, that's consistent with the governor's proclamation of more than $800. And how we arrived on $800 is that's about 3 full billing cycles. So part of the payment arrangements, they have to continue to be current on their current bills for us to do a payment arrangement with them. And then we'll stretch out over up to 6 months the outstanding balance. If they have a balance larger than $800 or more, we'd be willing to go up to 12 months. That's the longest we're proposing for these payment arrangements.
But there's no plan to not have somebody pay, like forgive.
Right.
No, no. And in fact, if they do not make their payment, it voids the contract and all comes full and due.
I don't think you can forgive someone's utility bill because it's gifting of public.
Correct.
Correct.
And I just wanted to confirm because it doesn't like come right out and say it, but we aren't charging late fees, right? Or
Yeah, during this time, we're going to continue to follow the governor's order to not charge late fees and penalties. Again, this order only goes through July 28th. And so we're going to call it the full month of July, unless he extends that proclamation. But once a customer enters into a payment arrangement with us, we all also no longer charge them penalties and late fees because they are working with us to make their payments on their past due balances. So it doesn't seem right or fair to charge and penalize. I mean, that's the whole purpose of working with the customer under payment arrangements. The last bullet point does point out, though, that if they fail to make the payments under the plan, it all becomes void and the current balance and penalties start up again.
You know what?
Mayor.
I
Yes.
have concern with your third bullet because unlike Bremerton allows utilities to be in a tenant's name, our utility does not. They're always in the property owner's name. So
Correct.
why would we have accept payment arrangements from tenants when that utility bill can never be in their name?
Yeah, actually, we do not. It says payment plans will not be accepted by tenants.
Will not. Okay, I missed the will not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, why would we have the unless there? Why would
Well,
you
the real crux of that is unless the owner comes and signs, they're like signing as a co-signer almost, because they're acknowledging that they are now responsible for the outstanding balance. In Washington State, the owner is ultimately responsible for any tenant balances. And so that's why we don't work with the tenants. We have to work with the owners directly. So in this case, if the owner is willing to come co-sign with the tenant, we're putting that out there that we want to work with you. Again, if the tenant defaults, all bets are off and everything comes currently due, and ultimately the owner is responsible for the outstanding balance. So it kind of does a couple
do we
things.
even want to deal with the tenant at all?
Yeah, that was my question is, if the owner is ultimately responsible, it almost would be the tenant would be co-signing the owner. But why would we even bring the tenant into the discussion?
Yeah, I would just end it. Payments will not be accepted. Plans will not be accepted by tenants, period.
I think that often what happens in reality is that an owner will simply get the bill and then hand it to the tenant. So the tenant feels as though they are paying the bill and would come in and try and negotiate with us to make payments.
I hear you, but that's an arrangement between the two of them, and I don't think we want to be party to it.
Yeah, I agree.
Bremerton's a different story. Their utility structure is completely different. I had rentals over in Bremerton, and depending on the tenant, I would allow, because ultimately I would get a lien on my property and garbage bills, water bills, whatever. So if I had crappy tenants, I would just pay it added to the rent. But I preferred the tenant to have it in their name because then they're responsible for water usage. And so I'm not building it into my rent, but our utility structure is different than that and doesn't allow for that.
Okay. I'm going to highlight this and take it back to staff and see if there's any holes in that logic. If there's anything that could become problematic on the processing side. Because as Jackie said, yeah, tenants feel like they're making the payments because a lot of times owners don't even want to be involved. And a lot of times owners will say, hey, why do I have to do this? And we'll go through the whole system and they'll say, well, I want my tenant to take care of the payment plans and arrangements. I don't want to be a part of this, but I'll sign for them to do that. So,
but we never issue a bill to a tenant. We always issue it's to the landlord.
It's to both. The tenant gets it and the landlord always gets it.
Okay, so different than I thought.
Okay. Huh.
So you're issuing two bills.
Yeah, and a lot of times tenants will come in to try to work with us and we'll say, hey, are you the owner? That's the first question. And they say no, and they would say, well, we have to work with the owner. Try to get a hold of the owner. Sometimes that can be problematic because sometimes owners are in the Navy or Army and they're overseas. And so the tenant can't get a hold of the owner. So there becomes some practical challenges. Again, the whole intent of this payment plan is to focus on a couple of things: A, the COVID event, a declared emergency, or extraneous circumstances in a similar nature. So this isn't trying to open up to everybody coming in, wanting to make payment arrangements. Right now, it's pretty focused.
Don't you usually find all the landlords on the golf course and you can't get a hold of them because they have their cell phone?
So,
So,
Exception for the present company, is that it?
Yeah.
so are we done?
yeah, so that's the sense of the policy. I want to make sure the utility committee was aware of it, and also the finance chair and the mayor. This is kind of where we're headed. And again, it supports, in our view, it supports what the governor's proclamation recently came out and said, requiring all entities to do.
Okay. So I see the next meeting is July 21st. Are we going to be meeting in person? Are we still Zooming then? What do you think?
I would assume we're Zooming.
In person?
I
No,
think-
Zooming. Zooming, okay.
Up to your guys' committee, but it's I almost find, and I'm gonna probably talk to you guys about, even when we go back to live council meetings, unless we've got some public hearing or something, I think the work studies we may stick with this platform. I don't know. Everybody's got devices, and I don't know. It's got to work for you guys too, but I'm liking it.
I appreciate the shorter commute.
It is a little different, but it is. I mean, it is very efficient.
I got my shoes off, and you guys don't know.
Mhm. You have.
I thought I smelled something.
That's the sewer lift station.
Oh,
Oh, right.
So I think this is the new norm because it's so much easier and quicker.
Well, the key is going to be, people having access to the meetings, which they do. And we haven't had anybody come to a utility committee since the old fluoride conversation, quite honestly, or the meeting conversation when we used to meet and have breakfast, and there was a big push just to force us to not have breakfast. And there,
good old days.
Yeah.
so there really hasn't been much interest in utility committee in the last couple, 3 years.
Yeah, but we haven't talked about rates in a while either.
No, and when we talk about rates or we talk about fluoride, that's when we may consider, going back to open meetings. But for now, and I don't even know if we're going to have a meeting in July yet. We almost didn't have this one because we were really trying to decide if there was enough meat on the bone to present. So
Noah was lurking for his opportunity.
I was waiting.
yeah, well, we don't want to meet just for the sake of meeting either. So at this point, we'll have the meeting in July unless we don't have enough update. But if we do, I'm sure it'll be by Zoom.
Okay, so then it would be a 5 p.m. meeting again.
Yeah. Well, I
Okay.
think they're all going to be 5 p.m. moving forward, whether it's Zoom or not. And that bodes the question is we can't change from Zoom until that's probably going to be the drivers when the council meetings
Yeah.
change.
I think we can do it at phase 3 with social distancing. It's just challenging because we still have to distance everybody in the chambers. And so who gets to sit at the dais and who's at the kids' table over at
Well, I
that?
guess the real question is why?
Yeah.
I mean, if this is working and it's convenient for the public to get access to, why would we change? I mean, I'm holding generally I do quarterly meetings around the county as the director of transit, and the attendance have been okay. I'm holding it virtually, and we've already got more people signed up to the virtual meeting than we ever did attend. All 6 meetings combined. So
The nice thing about this too, we're recording this, and all of those exhibits and things that we've put up are captured in the record for somebody to come along and watch that later. So we're actually probably reaching more people doing it
Yeah.
this way than we are having a meeting that nobody attends, and then they have to go shuffle through a bunch of paper that we created. So it's probably way more efficient.
Yeah, or put in public records requests for the meeting material and let's have to pull it back out.
Yeah.
I mean, this way you can push them back to the link. Here's what was presented. It's all there.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I guess, Madam Chair, we at 5:52 going to call this meeting to an end.
Sounds good. I guess we're going to see each other in about half an hour, right?